Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic Hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It was called Lost in Translation. And as the episode begins, we have Uhura's personal log, which tells us that the Enterprise is carrying out a mission to help a deuterium refinery get online in a nebula that apparently contains a lot of deuterium, which fuels starships, by the way. And I don't know if we've heard that before, that deuterium plays a role in powering starships or fueling starships, because I know we've heard deuterium before. I'm not sure in what context. And I definitely know we've heard that dilithium powers starships, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But anyway, this nebula is on the edge of explored space as well as on the edge of Gorn space. We find that Captain Pike has temporarily been made fleet captain because he's leading the Enterprise and the Farragut, which is also on the mission with them. Uhura receives some kind of weird signal that she can't identify, so she goes to recalibrate the communications array inside one of the warp nacelles because it goes through there for some reason. And she's doing it with the help of a video that was made back when Hemmer was alive, and ends up having some small talk with Pelia. Speaking of Hemmer, when Uhura gets in a turbolift to head back to her station, she encounters not only the signal there on the turbolift, but also a vision of a zombie Hemmer. The doctor tells her she hallucinated due to deuterium exposure, but also recognizes that she hasn't been sleeping, so he bars her from duty until she's gotten enough sleep. Uhura has an interesting dream while trying to get sleep, and Lieutenant KIRK, who has newly been made the first officer of the Farragut as a lieutenant, beams aboard the Enterprise as Sam takes him on a tour of the ship, which ends in the bar where they appear to be drinking actual whiskey and not synthahol. He and Sam have a conversation about how Sam hasn't gotten as far in his career as his brother, which Sam feels makes him look bad in front of their dad, who also had an impressive career, which included being the first officer of the Kelvin, which is interesting, and who apparently is still alive, which never came up before, so that's interesting. Pelia tells number one that she found evidence of sabotage on the station. Spock and Chapel play 3D chess in the lounge, and Spock tells her that he wants to take their relationship to HR, as it were, which Chapel doesn't want to do because she's afraid it would lead to whatever they're doing having to stop. Uhura goes to Spock and Chapel and tells them that she first heard the signal before she was exposed to deuterium. She then goes to sit at the bar where Lieutenant KIRK strikes up a conversation in which he points out that he's been observing the game between Spock and Chapel and had observed that Spock was on the verge of winning before Uhura interrupted the game, and which she quickly disengages from before heading elsewhere and finding herself in a hallway where she has another vision, this time of bloody dead crew members all over the floor and a sort of zombie version of herself, which she punches out, only to come to and realize that what she really punched out was Lieutenant KIRK. After she helps him fix up his bloody nose, he offers to take her medical record over to the Farragut to ask the doctor if anyone over there is experiencing similar symptoms, since no one else on the Enterprise is. Number one and Pelia find a hallucinating crew member on the station whom is taken to Enterprise. Speaking of Enterprise, it goes into red alert when they come under attack, which leads to the front window being blown open and the bridge crew being blown out, at least in yet another vision that Uhura has. KIRK returns with news from the doctor of the Farragut, who told him that the person who was just found hallucinating on the station had been seeing things for days, according to his friends, at which point he meets Captain Pike, which explains why Captain Pike was otherwise unnecessarily promoted to fleet captain temporarily for this episode, as opposed to permanently or whatever, because in the menagerie, KIRK says that that's when he met Pike, when he was promoted to fleet captain, which, of course, didn't mean temporary and in the field, and instead meant permanently and at a ceremony. But at least they worked in a little floofy doofy to make it match better with canon than if they had done nothing. So I got to give them credit for that one. Although why they keep involving KIRK when it's like okay, like what? But see, there's no reason to involve him, right? And so this is why we've said stuff in the past to those of us who appreciate canon, that they shouldn't be making these prequel shows. Even though I really like the show overall, they shouldn't be making these prequel shows because they're putting themselves in a minefield of canon and risking constantly butting heads with it. And they found a cute little way to sort of make this particular thing not be an issue, the two of them meeting. But like they wouldn't even have had to do it if they hadn't involved him in this episode, which is done for no reason. I mean, maybe they're building to something and maybe it's going to be important later that we've seen him at different spots along the way, but like, why? Why do they have to mess with it? The Farragut crew member, whose name is Ramon, freaks out while being examined by Dr. Mbenga and takes off, running through the ship, cutting the power and hurting crew members. Kirk and Uhura go looking for him, and she experiences yet more problems with the signal. Interestingly, while La'an is helping Pike search the ship for Ramon, they run into Kirk, who she, of course, sort of knows. Uhura thinks that she knows where Ramon is when she comes upon a spot of blood on the floor in front of a Jeffries tube, which she accesses in order to get to a nacelle where she finds him trying to eject a fuel pod. Uhura tries to stop him, but isn't able to, even with the help of Lieutenant Kirk, who shows up but only manages to call for them to be beamed out of the nacelle before an explosion rips through it and blows Ramon out into space. And here we are again at a moment where, the whole prequel thing runs into canon because there were no site-to-site transporters on the Enterprise or on Starfleet ships prior to Next Generation. And, this is not new. They've shown them on these older ships before. Again, it's just an example of why they shouldn't be doing prequels. Anyway, La'an comes across Kirk again. This time he's waiting for Uhura outside of sickbay, and they have a conversation about the importance of helping strangers in need. On the station, Pelia and Number One have a terse conversation over the fact that Number One doesn't like her very much since she's so loose with protocol and formalities. Uhura tells Kirk that after she lost her family in the shuttle accident, she would kind of hallucinate seeing the crash, which she wasn't present for, and Kirk tells her that it seems like confronting death has got her all messed up, but that she can't turn away because it would mean that death wins. She then goes back to watching the video of herself and Hemmer working on the communications ray and develops a hypothesis that something was trying to communicate with Ramon and now herself, but because their signal was too strong, it burned out his language sender and is going to do the same to her. She and the two Kirks realize that they've been sending her visions to explain to her that by mining deuterium, Starfleet is hurting undiscovered life forms in the nebula. And this episode just became The Devil in the Dark ripoff, as well as a sort of ripoff of other episodes from past Star Trek. We've seen this, it's aliens trying to communicate thing before. We're hurting them. She informs the captain, and Pelia and Number One try to shut down the station on his orders, but are unable to. And on her way to the bridge with Lieutenant Kirk, Uhura gets another vision of the shuttle crash that killed her family, and then sees another vision of Zombie Hammer on the bridge as she explains to the captain what's been happening. So the station is evacuated and destroyed. Zombie Hammer becomes normal Hammer, and he gives Uhura an approving nod before disappearing. Pelia and Number One have a conversation about how it isn't the fact that Pelia is a little loosey-goosey with protocol or the fact that she gave Number One a C in a class at the academy, but rather that Pelia reminds Number One that Hammer is dead, which has her all verklempt when having to deal with Pelia. Before the episode ends, and after Sam and Jim have yet another terse conversation as Jim is enjoying a drink with Uhura, Spock happens by and he and Jim meet for the first time. And that's where the episode ended. So I liked this episode up until the point where they revealed that what was happening was that an undiscovered life form was communicating with them the only way it could figure out how to do, since it's not like them, and that what it was communicating was that they were hurting them. Because we've seen this before on Star Trek, or something very similar to it. And they even blended in the whole mystery at the spot where we're mining, for lack of a better word, a necessary resource plot from Devil in the Dark. And I don't know, I mean, the performances were interesting. I always like Anson Mount's Captain Pike. The young lady that plays Uhura does a good job. It was great seeing Hammer again, but it's rehash, and I didn't appreciate that. I also didn't care for the subplot between Number One and Pelia. Like, what was the point of that? Why was that worked in? I mean, are they going to go somewhere with it? Maybe. But, I didn't see the necessity for that at all. It felt tacked on and didn't come to anything and didn't move me. It didn't cause me to think about anything. It's in a contemplative way. It was superfluous, so I didn't care for it.
Didn't like it.
And as I was saying, I don't know why they had to infuse Jim Kirk into the story. Like I said, maybe they're building to something and they they want us to have seen him a number of times before they get there to develop the character, but I don't know why they're doing it. It's just more opportunity for them to step on canon, which they avoided, I guess, this time around. But like, I don't know, it's just not necessary. And the part that he played in this episode could easily have been filled by Laan or even Ortegas, or for that matter, Sam Kirk, who they're underutilized on the show. I don't get it. Of course, the episode looked gorgeous. Seeing the Bassard scoops in action was awesome. Like I said, the performances were great, but it was just a big old rehash and had unnecessary plot lines in it, and that annoys me. But that's really it. There isn't anything else to say about this episode. I do want to say that I am putting together some things to make a video about Star Trek canon and a big change to the universe that was made a couple of episodes back. And I'm going to get that out in the next couple of days, just so you know. I'll be back to review the next episode once it's released, and I will be bringing you that video about canon in light of recent developments on this show. But for now, I take my leave, and I wish you peace and long life.